So our next speaker is Roberta Ward. She is a licensed clinical social worker, and in that role she knows all too well the impact of stress on one's well-being, but it was a personal crisis that pushed her past her own ability to cope. Learning mindfulness and meditation brought peace and a new vocation as a certified instructor. Please welcome Roberta.
Hi. I am so delighted to be here. Many of you know, but some of you may not know, I'm actually Dale's older sister. So as her older sister, I do just want to take a moment and tell her how proud I am of her. She has created with Cindy just something so beautiful, this creative community, bringing women together, fabulous women together to share. I could not be more proud of you, and I so appreciate what you've done, and it looks like a lot of other people do too. Okay, so my story. We'll start at the beginning. I was the oldest child in a classically dysfunctional family. I was a very sensitive and serious child. Let me show you. That's me. It's unfortunately actually a shockingly accurate depiction of what I felt like on the inside for most of my life. In addition to being a serious and sensitive child, trying to get my eyeballs working in the same place. I remember feeling that it was always my job to make sure everybody and everything was okay. I was always a helper. I was always a caretaker. Big surprise, I became a social worker. Ironically, the very same qualities that made me a good helper and a good caretaker, being sensitive, being empathetic, compassionate, being responsible, also made me chronically stressed and anxious. For any of you who have taken the Myers-Briggs test, no, anybody? Oh, a lot of people, wow. I am an INFJ who scored 0 on thinking, and every point possible on feeling. It was so much fun to be me. Those of you who don't know about what the Myers-Briggs test is, it basically means everything comes in as a feeling. For me first, I always know how I feel. I don't always know what I think, but I always know how I feel. And when I walk into a room, I usually have a pretty good idea how everyone else is feeling too. So as I said, it's kind of a treat to be me sometimes. These are my families. And, I was looking at I don't know if those of you in the back can see, but I was looking at that picture, and even in that picture, I've got kind of like this anxious smile. It's really entirely well, so okay. So that's a little bit about, how I was wired and what I was like as a little kid, but I'm gonna jump ahead to the year 2010. I was working as a hospice social worker. I was raising 2 teenage daughters, Keely and Kara. My husband, Eric, was traveling 2, 3, 4 days a week for his job when my mom had a stroke and my dad died in the same week. It was an incredibly difficult time for all of us. My dad had been sick for about 2 years, so Dale and our brother Doug and I had been traveling back and forth to Florida for those 2 years, and our parents have been separated for 20 years. So that made navigating, some of these challenges even a little bit more stressful. And did I mention I was in the throes of perimenopause? I could have used you, Jill. I was always better at caring for others than I was at caring for myself. But during this time, my self-care strategies, such as they were not operating. They were not working at all. I was really struggling. I was having significant migraines, significant anxiety. I was having panic attacks. I was not sleeping well. Much of my anxiety at this time came from not wanting things to be the way that they were. I did not want my mom to have had a stroke. I did not want my dad to have died. I did not want raising teenagers to be so difficult. I did not want it to be so hard for the people that I worked with to care for their dying loved ones. I did not want to be having 10 to 15 migraines a month. You get the idea. But these things were happening whether I wanted them to or not. At some point in the midst of all of this chaos, I had a moment of clarity. I realized that the more that I resisted, the more that I fought, the more that I ran from all of these things, the worse I felt. I realized that I was actually adding to my stress by pushing things away and trying to wish the things away and wish them to be different than they were. What I needed to do was to be able to accept the things that were happening, to be able to lean into my discomfort and my anxiety instead of running from them and fighting them. This realization resonated with me deeply as both true and terrifying. I thought, okay, like I get it here, but how am I going to do this? And this is where mindfulness and meditation enter. Over the years, many people had suggested meditation to me, and actually as I'm saying that, it makes me feel like my outside must have looked like that first picture that many people had suggested it to me. Anyway, I did. So I had tried it out a few times, but there was something about this time in my life that I felt pulled to it in a much stronger way. For those of you who are not familiar, mindfulness is about connecting your mind and your body to your present moment. And mindful meditation is really the formal practice of that mindful awareness of being in your present moment. So much of the anxiety in my life had always stemmed from worrying about things that had not yet happened but might, or things that had already happened that I wished hadn't happened or that I couldn't fix or I couldn't control. My mind was so often in the future or in the past. Somehow I knew deep down that learning how to be in my present moment was part of how I was going to be able to lean into my anxiety and my discomfort. The definition of mindfulness that has been so helpful to me comes from Diana Winston, who is the Director of Mindful Education at UCLA's Mindful Awareness Research Center. She says that mindfulness is the art of paying attention to your present moment experience with openness, curiosity, and a willingness to be with what is. The first time I heard this definition, it stopped me in my tracks. I thought, yeah, that's what I need to do. I need to be with what is. It felt like it had been written for me. But apparently, the being with what is was going to have to start with my willingness to be with what is. And at this moment, perhaps for the first time in my life, I was ready to do that. This realization was the beginning of a transformational shift in my relationship with the stress in my life and with all of those things that I wished were different. I began reading everything I could about mindfulness and meditation and talking with people and going to workshops. I learned to connect with my present moment experience by connecting with things that were always in the present moment, like my breath, my body sensations, my five senses. And I learned that the quality of my attention was also really important. Diana Winston says that we should pay attention with openness and curiosity. And other mindfulness experts encourage kindness toward and non-judgment of our experience. Learning to be more in the present moment and to be with what is has helped me to get out of my anxious and distracted thoughts and more into fully living my life. During this time of learning, it occurred to me that I had had a really incredible example of mindful living in my life. It was a hospice patient who I'll call Susan. Susan was in her mid-50s and she had terminal ovarian cancer. As Susan approached the end of her life, during one of our visits, she shared with me that she had been an avid golfer and she was really feeling sad about the fact that she was never going to be able to, hold a golf club or hit a golf ball again. And it was springtime, so it was that time of year that she always kind of got excited about going to the golf course. So as we talked a little bit more, and I should tell you, she was sick, but she was still, able to be up and around. At the end of our conversation, I said to her, well, would you like me to take you to the driving range? And she went, would you do that? And I said, absolutely. She said, then absolutely, I want to go. She was so excited. Her family was a little less excited about this idea. But when they voiced their concerns, Susan's response to them was, listen guys, I want to live until I die. And so, off to the golf course we went on a beautiful spring day, and I watched Susan absolutely transform before my eyes. You could just see her soaking in the warmth of the sun on her face and the spring breezes and taking in the beauty of the nature around her. When she put that golf club in her hand, it was really sweet. She was absolutely delighted by that. And for any of you who golf, you might know that when you hit a really good drive, there is a certain sound, like a smack, when you make contact with the ball. And she had several of those. And she was visibly thrilled. It was really a beautiful, beautiful thing to witness. She was utterly and totally in that moment, in that experience, taking it all in. She was not focused on her cancer. She was not focused on her short prognosis. She was not rehashing woulda, coulda, shouldas or regrets from her life. She was experiencing everything fully. Thinking back on that day, it struck me that if Susan could be with what was, and if Susan could fully be in her present moment, surely I could do the same. Susan was my first mindfulness teacher, although neither of us knew that at the time. Her example had always inspired me, but at that moment of reflection, it affirmed for me that I was on the right track with this moving toward getting comfortable with being what was. And so I began a daily mindful meditation practice. Mindful meditation, as I mentioned, is the formal sitting practice of mindful awareness. And research has shown that it helps to settle the nervous system and can actually change the brain in ways that correlate with the physical, emotional, and mental benefits that are reported by longtime meditators. With practice and over time, it definitely wasn't, like a quick fix, like turning on a light switch. It was definitely over time and with practice. I became one of those people reporting really great benefits. My migraines and my anxiety decreased significantly. I was no longer having panic attacks. I was sleeping like a normal person. It was really pretty life-changing for me at that time. In addition to that, and equally important, I noticed that my relationship with stress had actually shifted. My stress had not actually changed all that much. My mom still had ongoing health concerns. I was still raising teenagers. My husband was still traveling. I was still working with dying people and their families, still perimenopausal. But my relationship to these things had changed. And I had developed a mindset and an emotional space that allowed me to respond to stress rather than reacting to it. The impact was so profound, in fact, that I decided to train and become certified as a mindfulness and meditation instructor so that I could share these practices and their benefits with others. I began sharing techniques with patients and their families. I did workshops and in-services with coworkers and hospice volunteers, all people who were dealing with high levels of stress on a daily basis. I found that helping them learn how to calm their nervous system and how to shift their relationship with stress was a really powerful experience. In fact, I had one volunteer that came up to me and said, "Oh my gosh, thanks for sharing and not keeping it to yourself." And it has been very meaningful to me to be able to share these practices and their benefits with others. But I have to tell you, doing so has not come without its own discomfort. Among my fears and anxieties, as anyone who knows me well will tell you, is the fear of public speaking. So I've had to practice what I preach and continue to lean into and to be with my discomfort in order to do this work that has become so important to me. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. My dear friend Laura, who's here tonight and knows me so well, gave this to me a couple of years ago. It's a perfect gift. This year, I decided to really put it to the test. In the last 6 months, my husband and I sold our home of 20 years in Palatine. We moved into a 2-bedroom condo in the city. I left my job doing hospice social work, and I've started my own company, Mindful and Well. I now teach helping professionals how to practice better self-care through meditation and mindfulness so that they can continue to care for others, but without sacrificing their own well-being. I've never dreamed of being an entrepreneur. I've never dreamed of being a teacher. I've always been a little more comfortable in the background, kind of worker bee. So being out front and being visible and being in the lead is definitely outside of my comfort zone, but here I am. Through the practice of mindfulness and meditation, I've learned how to better be with what is, even if it's outside of my comfort zone. And consequently, I've also learned how to live life more fully. And now I'm hoping to help others do the same. So before we end tonight, I'd like to share with you just an easy mindfulness practice and invite you to be with what is in this moment. All right, so in this practice, we'll connect with our present moment experience by connecting with a few of our senses. Our sense of touch or feeling, our sense of hearing, and our sense of sight, all of which are always present in the present moment. This is a practice I use every day. It can be done by anyone, anywhere, anytime, in just a minute or two. You can use it as I do before I drive. It's a great way to kind of get out of my head and make sure that I am actually going to be doing a good job driving. I can't say that. That I'm present for driving. You can use it anytime you're flustered or overwhelmed. At a workshop I did with CNAs at hospice, I encourage them to do this before every patient visit to help clear their mind and to help them be present for themselves, but also for that patient that they were going in to give care to. Because when you're present, there are not only benefits for you, but there are benefits for anyone that you're in relationship with. We've all been in a conversation where someone wasn't really present, and it doesn't feel great. So bringing that presence to another person is also a wonderful thing. So this is a really simple, effective way to get out of your head and connect your mind and body to the present moment. So I'd encourage you just to find a comfortable position in your chair, feet on the floor. A straight, kind of alert but relaxed posture. Allow your shoulders to just fall away from your ears. Your hands can be at your side or in your lap. And gently close your eyes if you're comfortable. Otherwise, gaze out softly at the floor in front of you. And with intention, let go of whatever stresses you've experienced today, whatever worries, whatever to-dos you have on your mind, and bring your attention, your awareness, to being here in this room at this moment. Take a few long, slow, deep breaths, inhaling slowly and deeply through your nose, and exhaling slowly and fully through your nose. Feel your belly expand on the inhale and contract on the exhale. Long, slow, deep breaths like these send a signal to your body that it's okay to relax. Now allowing your breath to return to its normal rhythm and depth, bring your awareness to your sense of touch, noticing what you feel in this moment. Perhaps you notice the sensations of support or contact beneath your feet on the floor or your legs on the chair. Perhaps the texture of your clothing against your skin or the temperature in the room. Take a moment to notice some of the things you feel right now. And now bringing your awareness to what you hear, using your sense of hearing, listen for the sounds that are present in this moment. Perhaps the sound of your own breath, movement around you, or perhaps something outside of the room altogether. Take a moment to listen for what you are hearing right now. Now gently open your eyes or lift your gaze, and using your sense of sight, notice what you see in this moment. Look for some subtle details that perhaps you would otherwise not notice. Colors, patterns, the presence of light or shadows. Take a moment to see what you see in this moment. And then take one more deep breath in and out. It's a simple practice that can be done really in much less time than we just did it, just in a minute or two and anywhere, and no one even knows what you're doing. I'd like to leave you with this quote that sums up my experience of learning to be with what is in life. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. Thanks so much.
Roberta and I end many conversations with thanks and sorry, because it pretty much covers everything. So thanks and sorry, Roberta. I know you don't like the spotlight, so you're really glad I started this, right?
I'm so proud of you.
It's so great to see Roberta because my brother and I were the entrepreneurs in the family, and you're so talented and have so much to share. And I think my blood pressure dropped 10 points while you were talking, just to hear your voice. So good. I wanted to ask you, like when you said that picture, like people saw this dress, I thought you were going to say about the idea of meditating, because a lot of people are like meditating or mindfulness.
Right.
Why do you think it's so hard?
I think it's a couple of things. I think in our culture, being still and quiet is kind of countercultural, for one thing. I also think there's a lot of mystery, and we've all heard of mindfulness, we've all heard of meditation, but I think sometimes people are not really sure, like, how do I do it, what do I do? Really and truly, you just need 3 things to meditate, whatever type of meditation you do. You need your gentle and kind attention, you need a focus for your attention, and you need a willingness to do the practice. And I would say the willingness to do the practice is the toughest part, for sure. It's deciding, it's really making a choice to say, I need this, I want to do this, I'm going to value my well-being enough, and start where you are. I mean, you don't have to start with 20, start with a minute a day or 2 minutes a day of that quiet, just being in that present moment, and go from there. But make that commitment. I think that is actually the most challenging thing. Sometimes for people, they'll say, oh, I just don't have time. But then if you look at the million things we do with a minute here, or 5 minutes there, 10 minutes there, the reality is we do have time. We have to choose how we spend that time.
Any questions for Roberta?
Hi, I know Deepak Chopra meditates first thing in the morning, but I think I'll just go back to sleep. So is there a good time of day to meditate other than right after you wake up?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say whatever time you actually do meditate, like that gets you to meditate is a good time to meditate. Right before bed, you would think, because it can be relaxing, would be a good time. It's the one time, at least in the training that I've had, that sometimes they encourage you not to right before bed, because as much as it can relax you, sometimes people also find they have a certain relaxed but alertness that they get, a clarity after meditating. So I would say not right before bed, but any other time that works for you, really. I have one person that I work with that it just works for her. She's a teacher. So after school, she goes to the wellness center to work out, and now she's just sort of packaged her workout and her meditation, and that happens at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that works great for her. I know other people who do what they call a happy hour meditation, and they make it their transition from work to home. I'm one of those early morning, but a lot of times I'll also do one of those afternoon. So there's not a right or a wrong. It's really finding what's the time that you're going to actually stick to, what works for you, and what are you going to, make work. Yeah.
Anybody else? I have a question. Okay, there are so many apps out there, meditating apps. Do you
Yeah.
have one you like, one you could recommend?
It's a great question. There are a lot of apps out there. Some of them are free. A lot of them start free, and then they have, add-in kinds of things. There's one that's totally free called Insight Timer. It's wonderful because I use it because I do a lot of silent meditation, so I literally just use it as a timer, and it has these really nice gong sounds, but it's got thousands of guided meditations. You can look for a 5-minute meditation, you can look for a breath meditation, you can look for a body scan meditation, you can look for, a female voice, a British voice, whatever. And so Insight is one I would say is really great. I know people who have used Calm. Laura's used Calm and really likes it, and they have a free sort of get you started component that you can continue to use for free. Headspace is another app that people tend to like. Yeah, there definitely are a lot of them, but I would start with those.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
You should do an app with your nice voice.
I was
Your voice is very good.
Oh, if you go to my website and put your email in, you can download a free meditation.
Roberta, where did you get your certification and why did you choose where you went?
Thanks, Cindy. I became certified through the McLean Meditation Institute. They're based in Sedona, Arizona, and Cork, Ireland. And that sounds like why I chose Cork, Ireland. It was a cherry on top. Part of the reason I chose this program is really based on what I was saying earlier. I think there are a lot of people who like the idea of meditating, but it gets a little too much. They're not too sure. There are so many traditions of meditation, and as a social worker, we're trained to meet people where they are. So I wanted to learn in the most accessible way possible. So that is not to diminish any of the traditions, and we got training as a background in many of the traditions because meditation is based in a lot of faith traditions. Almost all of the major religions have a contemplative or a meditation history. But that can be a stumbling block for some people. And if I got trained in one and then someone else was interested in another. So I'm really trained more in techniques rather than traditions because I felt that that would make it most open and available to anybody that I might work with. And then you can add in, whatever you want after that. But people get hung up on like, do I have to hold my hands like this? What do I have to wear? And really, you don't need any of that. If that enhances your experience, awesome. But for some people, they just want the wellness benefits out of it. So that's how I chose to become trained. Thanks for asking.